Welcome to season 9 of the Charity Matters podcast. I'm Heidi Johnson, nonprofit founder, lifelong helper, and your host. I've been interviewing modern day heroes for over a decade with my blog, and I'm excited to share these inspiring conversations on our podcast. Join me as we learn the challenges and stories of innovators, entrepreneurs, and modern day heroes who set out to solve the problems of humanity. Did you know 1 in 4 teens claim to have mental health challenges, and 75% of those teens don't feel like they have anyone that they can share that with? Today's guest is no stranger to that fact. Rob Thorson is the founder of ShoulderCheck.org, part of the HT40 Foundation, and I'm so excited to share his incredible journey and our conversation about all he's doing to make a remarkable difference in this world, spreading kindness. I'm so excited to have Rob Thorson today of the HT40 Foundation joining us. Welcome, Rob. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for giving me the chance to speak with you today.
We're so excited to learn about your organization. I know you guys just had a really big weekend and a lot of things going on, but let's just dive right into it so our audience can really learn about what does the HT40 Foundation do?
Yeah, the HT40 Foundation was formed to do just kind of one thing, one simple thing and a specific thing, which is to inspire and enable young men and women to check in on one another. So give them the tools to do it, give them the motivation to do it. And our goal is to make checking in on the regular a daily habit.
I love that. I love that. And as our world gets more complicated, the most simple, basic things that when we grew up and when I was growing up, you would just knock on your next door neighbor's door. You didn't text them. You would just be like, hey, do you want to come out and play? You just did that because you were bored. So you were looking for someone. It wasn't like checking in, but now we're connected, but not connected, right? As we evolve.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the premise, or that's kind of our jumping off point for this organization, for the HT40 Foundation, and our first initiative, which is the Shoulder Check, which I'm sure we'll speak quite a bit about.
Yes, we will.
That's the backdrop, right? And I guess it was April of 2023, Surgeon General published that study, declared that we were suffering a national crisis of loneliness and isolation. And
Yes.
your point, like, it's counterintuitive. We're more connected than we ever have been. Just like we're able to speak now, we've got tech, we've got phones, we've got all these social media platforms that create connection. But in actuality, we're feeling more apart than ever before. So that's exactly the kind of context, or that's what we're pushing against. That's the big problem we're fighting.
Absolutely. I was actually in an event that Oprah spoke at UCLA for a new mental health hospital they're doing here in Los Angeles. And the Surgeon General spoke. And he had just made that announcement and he spoke about it. So I got to hear him talk about it in person within a couple of days of that announcement. And it was really powerful and impactful. So I'm excited to get into some of that. But I have to say, no one ever in the history of the world has said when they were a child, when I grow up, I'm going to be a nonprofit founder. That just is not on anyone's radar. There's a series of things that happen that lead us down this road. And but I'm always curious about your people's childhood, or did you have mentors, or did you grow up with family that volunteered, or did you ever have any sort of, if you look back at the path, any sort of signs or things that happened in your life that would have been a cursor before everything else?
I mean, no, this organization, the catalyst was, I think, the flip side where a lot of people come from, which is less maybe a lifetime of service and more a catalyst that just turns your life upside down in an instant with the passing of our son in May of 2022. I think there was just my son died by suicide in May of 2022, and it was just this overwhelming notion of we have to do something. I think that was the first catalyst, right? Just this feeling of like we are going to act in some way, because the way we were acting and the way our lives were going before, were fundamentally altered. We're no longer on that course any longer. And that just kind of just pointed us down a different role. I can trace a lot of lines in what this idea does and who I am in relation to it, to who I am in my professional background and who I've been, for most of my life. Um, but at no point, had I kind of thought that we were going to try and do an idea like this or make a difference in the way that we're trying to do, were it not for the fact that we had lost Hades.
I completely understand that, and that not only from interviewing um, hundreds and hundreds of nonprofit founders in the last 15 years, but also being someone who, my mom was hit by a bus and in a tragic car accident with my parents years ago, and the same sudden shock that just it's like the paddles they put on your chest. You just, this isn't real, this hasn't happened to me, and the aftermath of what that the devastation of that loss is, and a child is a completely next level of that. And I'm in no way comparing mine to yours, nor would I ever. But people people die all the time, but not everybody turns around and says, I'm going to do something with this. So what was the was it an instant thought process, or was it months later? Was it
Yeah.
how did it come about? Because it's unusual. I mean, there are 1.6 million nonprofit founders in the United States, but there are a lot more people that die that they
Yeah.
don't create a foundation. So talk to me about that, Rob.
Yeah, and I guess, reflect on the question before, I think the through line for me personally and what I do now, which is what I did before, is, and my background's in marketing and advertising. Right? I used to run ad agencies before I did this. And so I've spent my career around ideas. And
Right.
Shoulder Check and the HD40 Foundation is an idea. And I think I almost kind of say it just happens to be a nonprofit. It's an idea first. And when we set out,
Right.
we're going to build the HD40 Foundation, and our first idea was the Shoulder Check, and it's what
Right.
we spend all our time on.
And explain the shoulder check. Explain
Yeah.
what that, if you're not a hockey player,
Yeah,
explain the
yeah.
analogy.
The shoulder check. So the shoulder check is like we're on a mission to make kindness a contact sport. And our refrain or our tagline is reach out, check in, make contact. And my son was a hockey player. A lot of the people who rallied around us in the aftermath of his loss were in the hockey community. And it's just serendipitously, all these people and their energy coalesced together around this idea. And the idea is just, we do shoulder check games. Kids get together in the locker room at center ice, wherever, and they put their hands on each other's shoulders and they say, I promise to reach out, check in, and make contact. But very quickly transcended hockey. We're in classrooms, we're in schools, we're in communities. We do events everywhere. But kind of circling back, like that, the idea was just to get people to put hands on each other's shoulders. And we thought, could we build a brand around that? And if we built a
Wow.
brand around that, what would we market? What would our products be?
Right.
What language would we use to communicate it? And ultimately, as is the job of marketing, advertising, communications, is to change behavior in some way, right? And
Right.
whether that's in the more traditional commercial sense, like a purchase transaction, right? But there's
Right.
tremendous, just awareness campaigns and work that's been done to help kind of create change. And so that's where we started with it. Like, what if we took an idea, built a brand around it, and that happens to be a nonprofit?
Right.
That way, it was a continuation of what we always did, which was to try and have ideas that could make an impact in some way. And it just so happens that this idea makes the impact, which was it's an answer to a question, to be honest with you. When Hades passed, a lot of people called, asked, wrote, as people are wont to do, and especially
Right.
the kids, and they said, who's going to do what Hades did now that he's not with us anymore? And it took a second to realize what they meant, but what they meant was like he was the hand on shoulder guy.
He was
And
the
so this
check-in guy.
idea, yeah, and this idea answers that question. We all can. Um, we're all capable of checking in on one another.
We 100% are. And I think that, I mean, it's so beautiful. And you said serendipitous, but as I'm sure you've realized by now, there are no coincidences, and there
Yeah.
are no, when you have, especially when you have loss, there are so many things that signs or coincidences or serendipitous things that bring you together. But the fact that you have that skill set to be the messenger for this message is no accident, and it's a gift. And then to note that you have a gift and that you need to use it to not only honor Hayden's legacy but to grow it and continue, is so incredibly beautiful. But starting nonprofits are no picnic. It is no fun. It there is so much joy in so much of it, but it is really hard work because we're entrepreneurs at the end of the day. And I think so often people think of charity, or we just kind of get put in this other category. And here you are, a business person, running a successful business. You have this incredible loss. You're starting another business, just dealing with grief and laundry and life on its own is an enormous challenge, let alone starting something in the middle of it. So talk to me about like some of the challenges during the timing of this. I mean, it's only been 3 years. It hasn't been, it's been a minute in the scheme of what you're managing, Rob. You're managing a lot.
Yeah, I think it's one of those ideas that is a bit of a virtuous circle, so to speak, right? Like it takes care of itself. The very act of putting a hand on a shoulder or feeling a hand on your own shoulder, is
Right,
obviously exactly what we all needed in that moment. You know,
right,
what counterintuitively we needed Hades around to say how you doing.
right,
And so
right.
we wound up very quickly. I had this, I waited a couple of months. So we were actually steered on course. I had another, I guess you're right. Like maybe there's no such thing as serendipity in certain situations, but I had a
Yeah,
conversation. I happened to be working with a national nonprofit in my professional life when this happened, and they're in the mental health and wellness space. So naturally, I had reached out to the woman who's the executive director there, and I was like, I have to do something. We're compelled to act. And she said
right.
something that it sounds harsh when I say it even now, but it was the single thought that put us on course. And she said, you need to leave this to the professionals. And I was like, wow, what does that mean? And
Yeah, interesting.
yeah, and it meant like, I reflected on that. I'm like, yeah, I'm not an interventionist. I couldn't identify a crisis when, it was in the next room, right? In the
Right.
making. And I was like, wow, that is like devastating. What are we going to do about that? And then I was like, well, hold on a sec. Um, I am a professional in a different regard. So what if we
Right.
started there? So we just started in a different place and said, let's start with like I was saying before, an
An
idea,
idea.
which is a simple. I drew a sketch in my notebook like 3 months after it had happened, and it was just, I have a hand to give. I could use a hand. Like that was it. That's the whole
Wow.
idea. And we're very fortunate insofar as both my wife and I, both of us ran ad agencies. It was her agency that again just jumped into the mix with us on a completely pro bono basis. And we just got together and did what we do in that professional context. I had an idea for a brief, and we had our team and we sat down and we went through the process that we would do as if any other project.
Right.
First idea that came out of that process was the shoulder check. And let's make
Wow.
this a contact sport. Yeah. Um, and that just kind of, everybody just got on board. And I think the reason why is because the idea is so simple, right? Like everybody.
Exactly. And that's what's so powerful. And I'm sure you've had, I mean, I know when we started the nonprofit that I started with a group of friends is called Spiritual Care, and we were providing chaplains of all faiths at Children's Hospital Los Angeles, and crazy doors kept opening. So, here I lose my mom, and within a year I'm being asked to, give back and start this nonprofit. And I'm like, wait, what? But doors kept opening that were unexpected, and they just kept opening and opening. And it feels like someone's showing you the way. Like you don't know what you're doing. No one that I've ever interviewed, regardless of, I've interviewed CEOs, I've interviewed people that were stay-at-home moms, I've interviewed everyone who started a nonprofit. No one no one read the book Nonprofits for Dummies, which now does exist. No one's even read it, I don't believe. Um, and no one knew what they're doing, but they just did what they knew how to do. And that's exactly what you did. You do what you know. And then this community, this magnet, this energy, it starts happening and it starts rolling like a snowball. And you just had a big snowball this weekend with your big event. So talk to me about what fuels you when it is tough and and what fuels you to keep going, because grief still hits. You still get grief triggers, you still get taken down, you still have to deal with just life, and yet you're managing this whole new business, which is takes on a life of its own. So what fuels you when you're struggling with all that? And when do you know you made a difference? And I think the answer and the question are all probably together.
Yeah, I mean, like I was saying before, this idea itself is in a way, like I guess its own kind of therapy, right? And we made this idea with 60 or 70 kids in our local community. When we were working this idea, before it launched, we were having meetings with 30 or 40 kids at a time, whether it was at our house or in the town's community center. And we were sharing and iterating this idea because from day one, never wanted this to be, it's not my idea. It's everyone's idea. It's our idea. And I talk
Right.
about that a lot. Like this is not, we're still in the naive enough to believe a good idea will find its footing and grow. Like if it's a good
It
idea,
will. It
right.
has. Look at it already. It has.
Yeah, it has like
You're off to the
exponentially
races,
more.
Rob, whether you like it or not. You
Yeah,
can't
yeah.
get off. You're on the course. You're on the
Yeah,
track.
yeah, and in a way, like I was thinking about this the other day. It's almost like you've created a not a contract, right? Like I don't like all of us we have our agency, right? We choose where to
Right.
invest time and our effort. And so the day might come where, to your point, like I don't know, maybe it will be too much, maybe it will be too heavy an experience, and I leave open that door should that ever be the case. But right now, I see the impact it's making, and I hear the stories from people directly sharing that it's made a difference in their lives. And that's,
So talk to me about what that looks like. I mean, what you're hearing. What are some of those things that you're hearing with your impact?
oh, I mean, I guess, because like we said before, if we've got the Surgeon General declaring this crisis of loneliness and isolation, it means that people are feeling it at scale, right? It's
It's
not a
real.
dual thing.
It's real. Right.
About 1 in 4 kids needing mental health support on an annual basis. Um, but on the flip side of that, and 75% of them say they don't have someone to go to when they're feeling like they need help, but nearly everyone will accept help from a friend. And that's
Right.
what we're trying to do here, right? So like, and this is a long way to get a sandwich to come back around to how I know that it's working. Um,
You got some time.
yeah, nice. But like where the other input for us for this idea is there's a lot of great work out there that is being done at the intervention level by professionals,
Right.
making meaningful difference with care. And then even there's quite a lot of work, public service campaigns, whatever you want to call them, that are talking to people who are struggling, things like you are not alone or it's okay to not be okay. And I
Right.
was, okay, well, what if we gave everybody a role in the dialogue? So what if we just finished the sentence, you are not alone because I'm right here beside you? And it was great for
Nice.
us to talk to everybody, right? Give everybody a role in discussion because ultimately we're trying to create space for people for vulnerability, right? It's like the hardest thing,
Right.
cliche, the hardest thing in any language to say is I need help. If we can get everybody involved in doing that, then we could probably help a lot more people ask for the help they need. And like I see that working. I know it's working. I hear it from
Right.
on both sides of that coin. People saying like I went home and checked on someone because I knew they were struggling but didn't know how to start a conversation. And then on the flip side, someone will say to me, we've had it happen directly in the programs that we're working with, where someone will say, I was struggling and my friends came to me and it made a difference. Like, and it's another cliche, if you help one person, it was worth it. But like we're helping.
That's how it starts.
Yeah, but we're helping a lot of people with this. And again, it's just like inspiring and enabling people to do something that's very natural when you're a little kid, right? Like
Right.
the kid on the grocery store floor couldn't get the Fruity Pebbles, losing his emotion, right?
Right.
No
Right.
barrier to that. And then as we get older, we kind of get more self-aware. We're worried about externalities and all that stuff. Like I think what we're just trying to do is get back to something that we all natively have within ourselves, which is the ability to like care for one another, be aware for one another, and express ourselves. So I feel that coming through everything that we're doing. I hear it coming in the things that we're doing. And like I said, a little bit of like, and now that we've got this thing started, like I see people looking to it as something that can help or add value. And that's motivating
Of
and
course.
validating.
Right. Well, and I also think sometimes we're our own best and worst enemies because when we start out, when we started spiritual care, our motto was one spirit, one soul, one child at a time. If we could just help one family, if one
Mm.
family had someone by their bedside, and then the next year we're like, okay, well, if we could just help, 100 families, and if we could just help, if we could just have full-time chaplains, and if we could just, and so on, right? And so every year we're our own worst enemies because no, our board isn't telling us like you need to have help X and Y more people, but we start doing this or we start looking for funding and we start looking to a foundation for funding. And then they're saying, well, what's your impact? How many people have you helped? How many have you served? And all of a sudden, it just keeps growing and growing and growing. And that's how everything starts. And that's the beauty of it, because what you're creating, and you just had it this weekend, but you're creating community and connection, which is at the end of the day exactly what a nonprofit is, right? That's at the core of what we do. We create community and connection. So talk to me about your event this weekend and what it was that what you brought together, because I know it was pretty exciting.
Yeah, yeah, it was. So it was our third annual Shoulder Check Showcase. So this is how we launched the idea back in August of 23. Now we're on our third annual event. It's a charity hockey game. But because right from day one we've had such incredible support, it's entirely NHL players that come and play in the game. And a lot of those guys that are in the game are our partners in this idea. Chris Kreider, Kevin Shattenkirk, Trevor Zegras, just to name a few, have been with us since day one. So we've got excellent support from that community from the start. And the first year we had the event, which was August 3rd, 23, um, I don't think anyone knew what to expect from it. And the event was meant to be, of course, like to land the idea, like reach out, check in, make contact, and to do it with the
Right.
support of all these professional athletes. But it was almost like an experiment because at that game, before we started the hockey game, there's about 2,500 people that come out. It's as much as the arena can hold. And everybody puts their hand on each other's shoulders. And we asked them to repeat that refrain, reach out, check in, make contact. And it caught people so off guard. I don't think they had any idea that that's what was coming. And you could see the emotional lift in the building. It was incredible.
Right.
And, this idea, it's a community event put on by the community, all volunteers. It's all our friends and family that do this. Every pro player that's there is there because they care about the idea. They invest a week of their time in this. We've done press tours and all the rest of it, and everybody's just there for it, up to and including the guys on. We have this kind of arrival line, and all the pro players will work an autograph line for the kids for like an hour outside in the 90-degree heat.
Oh,
And it's become something where, of course, like to be able to get that close to this many professional athletes, basically they're coming back to a rink that they grew up playing in to play in front of so many people that are currently playing in that rink, right? There's
right.
nothing else that exists like this that lets people have that experience, but then layer in the actual message that we're trying to deliver. Like this whole thing exists because that's 2,500 people that come to the building and experience what the shoulder check is all about. Hopefully, we can enable and inspire them to go home with that message, to bring it to their teams, to their communities, to their family, to their friends, to their jobs, wherever. And so this year was our third annual Shoulder Check Showcase. We had, I don't know, like a borderline all-star level roster of NHL players that came out to support. Um,
Wow.
the game was spectacular. We had John Brancy, who's the New York Rangers anthem singer, came and he does the national anthem. And this year he also sang "Lean on Me." Yeah,
Oh,
building to sing along with that. So like to have this emotionally uplifting experience while also being in this environment that you're so passionate about to begin with, seeing your favorite players on the ice, like it's a pretty powerful mix. Um, so yeah, it came off fantastic. We've had great pickup coverage press, but also great support from the NHL, the NHL Players Association, the different franchises. It's really incredible. And it's just another one of those moments, like we were saying before, that it's exhausting to do that. Like I'm not an event producer. Thank goodness
it's
one of our
exhausting. It's
is one of our
officially exhausting.
yeah, so one of our team members is a professional, but then the rest of us are in there just trying, like to put this thing on for the community. And I think the community also recognizes that too. But this year there's all kinds of great stuff in social, people talking about how they drove 6 hours to be there because it meant so much to them. And,
Wow.
yeah, and that's this event, and meanwhile this is the thing that kind of inspires the grassroots activation, which is where the idea needs to live to spread and grow.
Right, to get into schools and to get in and to do all that. And
Yeah.
I love that. And that is absolutely fantastic. And I'm glad you're still on an event high when I'm talking to you. I'm glad I didn't talk to you next week when you're asleep and crashed it out
Well,
for
no.
days.
Well, right now, everything, the whole world is just a long list of follow-ups, and which is
Right?
great because you've had
Because
obviously to thank all the participants and everything they did, but then also to cultivate those new conversations that have
right.
now sprung up on account of this. And whether that's because people were there to experience the event firsthand or they saw some of the media coverage. I mean, we've been fortunate. We've been on Good Morning America the last 2 years with it. So the reach of the message is genuinely national, and so too is the scope of the follow-up and the outreach
And
follow-ups.
Rob, you just need to know that's not normal. I mean, it's not normal.
No,
It's
no.
phenomenal, but I just need you to know it's not normal. I don't know what your expectations of normal are, but
Uh,
that's not normal.
well, when we started, people actually, again, we're very fortunate, right? Like we've been able to, it's our professional networks, Droga 5 is our agency partner, that have come out. Like I said, we started by building a brand. And
Right.
so when we started, we looked the part, so to speak. We didn't look
Right.
like, kind of an upstart.
Right.
And to the point where
Right.
people said, where do these guys come from? Because from
Right.
day one, when we turned the lights on, we had a pretty, we had a pretty full arsenal, so to speak, or our toolkit was full, and it's really well produced. These are my new hats, by the way.
Yeah,
Um,
they're good looking.
Shameless plug. But like we've had like a lot of great support with that. And again, even just some of our pro players being involved the way they are, just kind of, carrying the message from day one. Like we had a lot of momentum right out of the gates, and we knew that that was a tremendous asset for us, no question.
Well, I think it's really fantastic. And I will say this, when we did our very first fundraiser for spiritual care, we did a baseball fundraiser. We decided to do a Field of Dreams. And I went to this gal that I was referred, we were trying to find a baseball infield where we could serve alcohol, right? Which is all the public that you cannot have alcohol. And so someone said, this gal and my neighbor in Pasadena area has a baseball field, call her. So I cold called this woman. I didn't know her at all. And she was silent for a minute and she said, Heidi, we don't do events. But she said, do you know I lost a child at Children's Hospital? And I said, no, I had no idea. And she said, well, what was your thought? And I said, we were gonna, have play the movie Field of Dreams, the big blow up thing, have people bring chairs, have the Boy Scouts throw peanuts, have beer and baseball and use your batting cages. And she said, well, would it help if I brought the angels? And the angel was our logo. I said, the angels? As she said, like the team. I said, we're very good friends with the angels. And I said, um, sure, that would be great. And then she said, I think it's the Freeway series that day. Um, what if we get the Dodgers? And I said, yeah, we could do
We should
that.
do that.
And so we had the Angels and Dodgers literally showed up at our event. And then Kevin Costner lives in La Cañada and he did all sorts of stuff for us. And
Wow.
all of these signs and crazy things like what you're sharing were exactly what happened to us. And 23 years later, I mean, our nonprofit's been going for a while, but we couldn't get our heads around it. And it wasn't normal then, and it's still not normal. And they haven't come every year, but we really just went out for the bang. And it built that community that just supported us. So I completely have lived a little bit of your experience and know that there's such magic in it. And I love the fact that you're still getting that you have that media presence to get that message out because it's so important. So speaking of dreams, and if you build it, they will come. If you have any dream for HT40, what does the dream look like? Because obviously you're kind of out of the gate and you're an entrepreneur because you can't do this without a vision and a dream. It started with a vision and a dream. So what does the dream look like today?
Consistent with where we started with it. And I think this was another thing that was like a good, we were thoughtful about how we did this, right? So again, trying to build a brand means starting with strategic intent from the get-go and thinking like what's maximum upside while recognizing that I'm running startup.com out of my garage over here. You know what I mean? Like,
Right,
could it be?
right,
Um, but yeah, like my benchmark for it is, in much the same way you see pink as obviously a universal color for Susan G. Komen and women's health initiatives. And once all of October became pink, now the whole year is pink and the touch points that
Right.
are everywhere. And the guys from Movember picked up on that playbook and then took the kind of purple color, applied it to men's health initiatives. I hope what will happen with this idea is our kind of teal color, aqua color becomes synonymous with this idea of kindness and empathy and awareness for one another. And people can see their way into, just like they do for those other initiatives where they're raising dollars for disease research, right? That's a pretty easy
Right.
to make. Our Connect is a little less easy to understand. That's not the best way to say that, but we're not necessarily raising dollars. We're raising awareness for each other. Like that's our objective.
Right.
And for people
Right.
to see their way into taking this toolkit that we have or this idea and manifesting it in their own communities in whatever way works best for them.
I
Just like
love
anyone can
that.
tank and do a fundraiser around it in a way that works best for them. If you're a baker, if you want to do a run, however you want to do it, the
Right.
check works the same way. It's a toolkit that you can bring and deploy in whatever way suits you best. And, whether that becomes a September and August, September thing, which I like quite a bit because that's back to school. That's when a lot of fall sports teams come back together. There's a lot of
Right.
happening there, and then an opportunity
Right.
for people to come together and commit to one another. But yeah, that's it. That would be like the imagine what this could be kind of thought that was maybe page 3 in our original presentation. That's now in the back of the presentation because it's a little too much right up front. Um,
Right.
build some runway into that and help people see that this is a simple idea that people are eager to participate in, and then kind of get to that imagine portion of the pitch deck that says, here's these types of ideas, going all the way back to Livestrong and the Nike yellow bracelets with Lance Armstrong and those kinds of things. Like there is precedent for a kind of more brand-based commercial approach to these kinds of positive outcomes. So that's the kind of playbook that we're working
A
with.
100%. And I think that you are really off to the races because A, you have gifts and you have the gift in messaging and you're using those gifts. And when you combine your gifts and your passion, that's when the magic happens. And that's exactly what, why these nonprofits that thrive do, because it's that combination and that's exactly what you're doing. And it's so, you have to think sometimes there's some divine timing in this, and that Hayden has a hand in a lot of how this is all being orchestrated. So you've had some, and I know I don't always think that. I would say 95% of the people that I have interviewed, their beginning has started with an ending, and there's been some sort of loss or some sort of health thing or some sort of loss in some way, not always as extreme as yours and mine, but a loss. And then I'd say like 5% of nonprofit founders have had a near miss and they've had gratitude. And it's and
Mhm.
it's been the catalyst for them. But but with loss, you can't have a forest fire without a new forest, and you can't have an earthquake without a new city. There's growth that comes from loss. Whether you like it or not, it is the like one thing we get from this horrible thing that happens to us. So, and some of that growth are the life lessons that we learn in these crazy journeys that we end up that are completely unexpected. They're not on the trajectory we've set for our lives, but yet something, a clarity of what matters and what's important shifts in us when we experience something like this. So, what life lessons have you learned since starting all of this and since losing Hayden? There's a lot.
Oh yeah. I don't, we could definitely fill a few more hours kind of parsing some of that. But yeah, no, I agree. Like, I think, I mean, like, I obviously that kind of question is speak only from my own personal experience, and everybody goes through grief differently, and how they experience it and which direction they go in and those kinds of things. And I don't know when Hayes passed, there was just this it was just put on it. It was just put in a direction, right? Like your first
Right.
reaction, something like that could be any of a number of things. But I very quickly found a place of like feeling like I was afforded a grace and in understanding how much Hayden meant to me and how much he meant to so many people and how much kind of love we had for each other, for him and for him in the world, that we just had the ability to just kind of just to be present, I guess. It's like it sounds a little cliche, but in the beginning, you worry about what's going to happen, where am I going to be, how am I going to manage this? And ultimately, those questions aren't answerable. What happened? Why did it happen? Those questions aren't answerable. Or certainly wasn't in our case. And so the biggest lesson I've learned is to just accept that I can't control where we're going to be in a year or 5 years from now, um,
Right.
where we were going to be a month from now. But by just trying to continue to be present in the moment with what we're doing and with each other, and knowing that that means we're doing the best we can is probably the
Right.
number one thing. I wound up sometimes I go out and speak for the shoulder check and HT40, which, I understand we do that now, right? Like we have to get it started so that people can kind of carry it forward. But one of the distinctions I draw all the time is the difference between, you know, uh, you know, regret, um, and reflection. I think if we know that we're trying to do the best we can, or at least we're not trying to do the worst we can, right? As long as we're present in
Right.
the moment, whatever happens, happens. And you can reflect on that. And that's where learning comes from. Regret comes from not doing the best you can in a moment and knowing you could have done better. Like that's a big difference. And I think if we
Big
keep
difference.
ourselves in the place where we're reflecting on what we're doing while we're doing it, even if something doesn't work out the best plan, right? Like, you know, um, it's another page of my presentation, which is that no one gets it right, but we're all supposed to try. It's a song lyric. And that's it, right? Like we just keep trying to make a positive outcome. And when the day comes where we trip up or something happens, just afford ourselves the grace to know that we're trying to do the best we can. So
I
that's
think that
probably the
I think
biggest.
that's a beautiful lesson and a reminder for all of us. I think we get so far ahead of our skis sometimes and so forward looking that we forget to be here, just
And when you're
here.
dealing with, and I'm sure you can relate, right? When you're dealing with loss and when you're dealing with grief, it's overwhelming. In the beginning, you hear things about again, right? Everybody who's passed has walked their own path to that moment where they took that decision. And yes, there's archetypes and commonalities, but every individual is an individual, and every
Right.
individual is then a survivor that moves forward will walk their own path, and there will be commonalities, but ultimately we're all individuals. And you know, I found it personally devastatingly overwhelming when you try and find different avenues and maybe we went to a group or hear a story of somebody who's been carrying this and it's still that weight for them 20 years hence. I was like, I can't possibly allow myself to think that that could be what's going to happen here. And it just, again, coming back to the present, trying to be focused. And also, the other thing is like, you will have seen this too. Now we are on the other side of this thing, the amount of people that are already there that share things. People in my life who I've known my entire life, all of a sudden sharing a new part of them that just wasn't relevant or we weren't connected on that before, and
Beautiful.
who came to our sides and are stood beside us right then and still now. Um, those again, this idea is a community idea, and this idea and everybody as a part of it is carrying us forward in much the same way that we're trying to carry the idea forward. So yeah, like it to your point, like something like that happens. And my wife and I, Sarah and I, were just taking stock yesterday, right? Because the big event was last Thursday,
Right.
and just reflecting on the things that maybe you used to consume some of your energy or time, or some of the people that consume it in a kind of selfish way. There's a little
Mhm.
less time for that now because you see,
Isn't it amazing?
yeah, that,
It
and they're not always the ones you think they'd be. That's been a big surprise
no, no, they're not. It's almost as if we get a new set of glasses that shows us what matters. And in the face of loss, you have, at least I did, and a lot of people I've spoken to have this clarity of where we should be spending our time and energy. And those have tos that we used to just do blind, go through the motions and do, we're like, nope, I don't think so. Nope, nope.
Yeah. And I think in recognizing too, that's helping us move forward is recognizing it didn't take long to realize this, but like that sense of loss does not lessen with time. It's, you're
Yeah.
like cup
It
doesn't get full,
changes, but it doesn't
cup gets
lessen.
bigger. Yeah, the cup gets bigger. Like your life experience, the tree grows around the bench. You've seen those
Right.
images. It's a
Right. Right.
cliche, and
Right.
I know that, but like, yeah, like the loss doesn't lessen, but it's the growth on a personal level. that helps you better understand where that loss lives with you. But then also to your point, yeah, all these new people have come and we're doing this new thing. That's the growth side of it. I find that there's a duality to everything with this since it started. And I find that I'm always kind of thinking about both sides of it as once. And that's at once. That's always been an interesting part of this journey too.
Well, and I think that in the loss and in the growth, there's so much change that happens, and you're in it because you're now finding this, and you have this incredible pain that you've put into something that's creating purpose and creating legacy and creating making some sort of sense out of something, because you're seeing so much goodness when you see a stadium filled with people all having their arms around each other, and you're thinking, how did this happen? How like like what a beautiful thing that's just happened here. And so, but they live the pain and purpose still live together in that duality. So I completely understand that. And yet there's such um I don't know, peace in knowing that you can create something beautiful out of something that's such a tragic loss. And there's some sort of peace that comes with that I think. Do
Yeah.
you think you've changed in all of this, or do you think you're still the exact same person?
Oh, changed. I think I would say, yeah. At first I wondered if it was like an and, right? Like I'm the same person and now I have these other experiences that are new and additive. And
Right.
to an extent, that's part true. There's definitely there's probably three pieces, right? Like there's original Rob. We go third person.
Right. One
Yeah.
1.0.
Yeah, there's original Rob, and then there's obviously post, 2.0 Rob, which is this new experience that we've had in the world. But then there is definitely something that's the word is not necessarily reductive, but it's definitely a different understanding, just like we've been saying of, I wouldn't say that I live in the world entirely different, not at all, but I see things differently. There's no question about
Mhm.
that. And I think maybe that was a smaller part of me before. That's a bigger part of me now.
Right.
That's been brought out by what's happened. Um, in a way, this idea might be a representation of Hayden, right? Like it is Hates. This idea is Hates. And in that way, like I feel a duty of care for this idea because of what it is and who it represents. And that's definitely makes me a different person. No question about that.
Well, he definitely lives on in your work and what you're doing, and will continue to live on. And what a beautiful legacy. If we could all live a legacy as beautiful as checking in and a shoulder check and kindness and just caring about one another. I mean, that's about as good as it gets.
Yeah.
When we all walk off this earth, if we could leave that behind and we know that that's what we did and the impact we made, that's that's pretty good. I
Yeah.
would be I would be at peace with that. I would be at peace with that.
Yeah, yeah, I feel like that'd be pretty good, and I think that's why, that's it. Like, if anything for me, for us as a team, that we're trying to support this idea in the world and kind of like not get in the way of it. But at the same time, that's the naive side of it. Like, if you build it, you will come. That
Right? Oh yeah, trust me.
yeah, and recognizing like there will be a time where we need to business manage with a bit more intention, like and I think that's kind of the
Right.
fork that we're coming up on now where we will continue to be naive in our belief that a good idea will travel. But yeah, the other pieces of just like you say, recognizing that this is a small business that we've started
Yeah.
and well, it's a big small business right out of the gates that needs to be managed, with a little more intention in that direction. So that'll be kind of our next kind of act of maturity for our idea here is to start to build the things it needs in that way, which I'm
And
interested in exploring.
and you will, and it will happen. And it just you blink and all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, it's been X amount of time and we've done X amount of served X amount of people and help people. And that's just the beauty of this work. It is hard, it is fun, it is exciting, it's emotional. But at the end of the day, um, we make the world a better place. And I love focusing on people like you, Rob, and introducing them to everybody else, because we all need to be inspired. We all need mentors. We all need to look and find the heroes in the world and the people that are serving one another. So I'm so grateful for you for sharing this with us. But tell us how we can support you, volunteer, donate, follow, where we can find you, how we can bring this to our communities. Give us all the
Absolutely.
good stuff.
Absolutely. So our site is shouldercheck.org. There is an ht40.org site that's just kind of in the background. Our main site is shouldercheck.org. We just kind of re-engineered it too. So there are two specific sections on there that talk about get inspired and get involved. Both of those are really illustrative where the ideas or how the idea is coming to life, what other people are doing with it on the Get Inspired page. And then the Get Involved page has the start of some downloadable toolkits or starter ideas for how you can kind of manifest this idea. But ultimately, it's an open-ended prompt that says, if you see value in this idea, let us know, and we'll support you in bringing it to life. So that's what's happening on the website, and then on at the Shoulder Check on Instagram, because at the Shoulder Check on Instagram, that's where you can kind of see the latest and greatest of what we're up to, all the great content from our recent showcase events there, all the stuff other people are doing in the world as well, tagging, sharing, all that good stuff. So those are our two primary touch points. That's where we're building that community, which is great. It's growing. And there's probably a few more we need to get active in, but that'll be next. But those are two primary spots. And then should someone want to support financially, that's amazing too. That can all be done through the website as well.
Beautiful. Well, Rob, I love what you're doing. I love what you are bringing to the world. I love the goodness and the kindness and the simplicity and the brilliance of this. And I love that you're empowering everyone who's listening to do the same. You're empowering everyone to just check in, on someone. It's something we can all do, something we all need to just be putting in the front part of our brains every day, to think about those people that we care about, think about people that need to hear how we're doing, just check in and see how they're doing. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for what you're doing. And I'm really excited to just help spread this message in any way that we can.
It's amazing to spend the time here with you. Thank you very much.
You're so welcome. Thank you. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Charity Matters podcast. I really enjoyed talking to Rob about what it takes to start a business that truly changes people's lives. I think his comment about being present was so inspiring and true. To learn more about these modern day heroes, or if you'd like to reach out to us, visit us at charity-matters.com or connect with us on Instagram at Charity Matters. If you enjoyed our conversation, we would love it if you shared it with your family and friends. And please don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. But more than that, thank you for caring, for believing in goodness, and for being a part of our movement. You are exactly what the world needs more of. And remember that together, we can make a difference. One small act of kindness at a time. Charity